Shemai friendly guy, and welcome back to my channel. My name's Caitlin Anwin for anyone who's new here, and let's get back into building in Planet Zoo. And today I'm going to continue doing the safari habitat. I've taken a little break from that, but I actually have an idea for this one which I haven't for a little bit, so I was really excited to start building that habitat. But first things first, I needed to fix this river that I had going through like the whole map. And if you haven't seen any of the previous videos, I actually got this map off the Steam Workshop. It is by a creator called swoop_there, and the link to the Steam Workshop blueprint for the blank map and for the video showing how they created this is in the description. What I needed to do was like split up the river because I needed to be able to play around with the water in the different sections, and I didn't want to mess anything up in the center section where the boat ride is. What I wanted to do with this is to create another river or stream, because this one's going to be a lot smaller than the main rivers on this map, and I was trying to replicate the flow of the rivers. It looks like a tree or like a tree branch. It flows really nicely. The way this is formed is just beautiful, so I wanted to play around with that a little bit more and try and make a branch off this tree to make a little stream. This is the first time I've ever used the advanced move tool to dig terrain like this. I was watching a tutorial for the new trend that's going around, the diorama trend. I think it looks really cool, but it doesn't really fit in with my style of building. If I can remember, I will put the link to the diorama tutorial as well. They were using this terrain shape tool to like fill in the diorama, and I didn't actually know that you could use the advanced move tool with this, and I was really happy to see that. I could have used that with a few other builds, so I'm really happy that I saw that on that diorama video. So I made like a shallower part of the stream and tried to gradually incline that part so they could get in safely. The flatten to foundation tool doesn't really fill in any gaps underneath though, so some parts of this were kind of hollow. I did my best to try and fill in the gaps underneath the flattened foundation, but I did end up with a couple of weird holes. If you're ever building underground like this or in a dark spot, underground is usually like the darkest place you can get in this game, you can press L on the keyboard and that will bring up a like torch, a light, and it will light up your screen a little bit. And if you go by any glass, it will actually reflect in the glass. It's a really cool effect. And now I'm happy with how the stream is shaped, and I got all the terrain smoothed out for inside the habitat. I then needed to work on the entrance a little bit. A big part of this map is the river, so it's nice for the guests to see the river straight away as soon as they get through that little town that I built. And that's like the entrance, and the first thing they really see is a bridge over a river, so it kind of ties in the rest of the zoo then, because a lot of the habitats are centered around the river too. I really wanted to incorporate this rhino statue blueprint from the Africa pack because the safari habitat itself is focused around the white rhino. So I wanted this statue to sort of show that guests are going towards the white rhino first. So now I've figured out the river itself, is now onto decorating the habitat a little bit more too. I wanted to create two different bridges, one for the animals and the keeper, and one for the ride track itself, because the ride track actually does need to go over the river at one point. For the animals and keepers bridge, because at the moment the habitat is split into two and most of the animals can't actually swim, so they can't get over this river at all. So I needed to make sure that the bridge was big enough for the habitat animals and for the keepers. The keepers are a little bit easier to build for, but the animals were tricky. I will be adding more animals into this habitat too. I'll be adding 4 more animals in at the end, and putting the pathway there first really helped with like a template to work off for the bridge. And you will not be surprised by the material that I'm building this bridge out of. Of course, it's the wooden arbor pieces, the weathered wood pieces from the Africa pack. I wanted to tie in the bridge over the river for the hippos as well, so it doesn't feel like this bridge is really out of place. So my plan for this bridge was to actually delete the pathway underneath once I had used it as a template. So I didn't want to actually keep the railings for the path or anything on the path itself. So I needed to build my own railing, and I hadn't actually used this object yet, and I'm trying to like play around with more than just my favorite objects. Instead of using the gold fence, I'm using this really pretty lattice shape. It's kind of like a lattice, like on a pie. That fits in nicely with the color scheme as well for the whole zoo, the browns, beiges and blues. I really like this patterned piece of wood. It's for the arbor, I think. I like the carving on the inside of it, but they were slightly too short for my railing, so I used a concrete block, still from the Africa pack, to make it a little bit taller, and I used a smaller wooden piece then to make like a little topper to make this look a little bit more interesting. I wanted this to be detailed but still feel natural. If you're ever building anything symmetrical like this, I would recommend actually building just one side completely before you duplicate it over to the other side. I duplicated like 3 or 4 times over onto the other side and then added extra details in and ended up having to faff a little bit more, which was a little frustrating. I was trying to get this completed as quick as possible. Still wanted it to look nice, of course. I always like to give you little tips and tricks like that I've picked up along the way building all of these different habitats. And if you want to know more tips and tricks, I have made a quick 10-minute video on 5 tips and tricks that I use all of the time, and putting the supports in as well. I didn't realize how deep I'd actually made this river until I started placing objects down. Sometimes my spatial awareness is just not there. I wanted it all to be the same depth as the main river anyway, so it's okay, and I probably didn't really need to put the supports all the way down into the ground, but it works. And you can't really see it from above the water when you're not in the group. You'll have like the shadows there when you're building in the group, but you won't see it too much once you're out of the group and you're just in the main screen. And I used these support pieces on the covered bridge that I built for the hippo habitat, and I really like these because these give the illusion of a curved piece, and I was trying to make the underneath of this bridge feel like they were archways there without actually putting an arch in. And I recolored these to be a cream beige colour to match in with the... I had the word for it. I've said the word for it, but it is gone now. The banister thing. The fence. I don't know. I had a word for it at one point. It's like when you enter a room and you forget why you've gone in there in the first place. You like walk into the kitchen and you're like, why am I here? So much worse when you're recording though. I have it all the time. This is the pop of colour that I wanted to add into this bridge. I wanted that little pop of blue to match in with the colour scheme of the whole zoo. And I've never used these pieces either. Now I'm coming to more of the end of this zoo. I'm trying to play around with more objects from the Africa pack. And these were really pretty and they feel like toppers. On the pathway bridge there was curved hooks, so I wanted to kind of replicate that. And now onto the 4x4 adventure tour bridge. This one's going to be a lot more simple. I wanted this to feel like the more rundown, older version of the bridge. So the ride track bridge was built first, even though I built it second. Kind of like the concept of the Severn Bridge. I don't know whether you're familiar, but the Severn Bridge connects Wales to England, and there's two different Severn Bridges. The newer one is like the main Severn Bridge to get to and from Wales, and then there's an older Severn Bridge. It's a little bit more rickety. I've only ever been on it once and I absolutely crapped my pants on it because it was windy and it sways. But that was kind of like the concept that I was going for with these two bridges. One was newer than the other, so one's a little bit more rickety and old. Definitely not like the Severn Bridge though. The Severn Bridge is huge, but I wanted this one to be more simple, so I didn't have like a railing going across. I didn't want it to block the ride itself. To get the supports evenly spaced out along the bridge, I duplicated the 4-meter ones and used angle snap to angle them straight down instead of straight across, and they actually fit in quite nicely with the supports underneath the ride track. It was like the supports of the ride track were going in between the supports of the bridge, so I played around with a few different things to try and make some supports for underneath the bridge. I tried some of the base game Africa style objects, and this was supposed to be for a hanging basket, I think. It was wooden and natural looking, which I quite liked, but the shade of the wood didn't match the shade of the wood for the rest of the bridge. Because of the wood shade didn't match the rest of the bridge, I didn't like it, so I got rid of that too. But I took inspiration from that and played around with the Africa pack wood pieces, the round one, and instead put some cross shapes underneath the bridge. I had something similar to this on the covered bridge for the hippos, so it tied in nicely with the other bridges, and it did make it feel more rustic because it's all made out of wood. It feels more rustic and natural, whereas like the pops of that metal on the other bridge made it feel look a little nicer and a little newer. Most of the new animals that I added into the safari used the same food and enrichment as the rest of the animals that were added in, but I'm adding 4 new animals into this habitat today, starting off with the black wildebeest. And the next animal I added in is the common ostrich. This didn't feel like it fit in with the rest of the animals, like the wildebeest and like the buffalo, springbok, sable antelope, they all kind of fit in nicely together. But these giant birds, I don't know, maybe I don't know enough about ostriches. Maybe they just make me uncomfortable because they're just not really that cute, but they just don't feel like they fit into the safari. I don't know. Maybe I should have looked into them a bit more, but I know the ostriches are enriched by sharing a habitat with the white rhinos. The next animal I added in was the Nyala, and they fit in perfectly. They were great. And lastly, I added in the plains zebra. But if you have any other suggestions of what kinds of animals I can add into this safari that I've missed out, I'll put a list in the description of all of the animals that are included in this habitat. Because there are 10 different species, it can get a little confusing. But I've added in all of the animals that are on the Zoopedia that have the interspecies bonus with the white rhino, because the white rhino is my main dude on this habitat. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. I struggled quite a lot trying to get some inspiration to build more in this habitat. This one's been a struggle, so I kind of avoided it for a little bit, but I'm glad I come back with this river. It was a really great suggestion by my mum, but if you have any other suggestions for some kind of hard shelter for this habitat or any other habitats for this zoo, I do like to keep 2 animals from the African continent, so if you could suggest any African animals and what kinds of habitats you would like me to build for them, I would be very grateful. So leave me that in the comments and let me know what you think of this habitat as well. Do you like the bridges? And I'm gonna leave it off there. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button, and if you haven't already and you would like to, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. I upload on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.